right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Representing Equity. I'm your host, Dan Kimbrough, and today our guest is Vince Balint from Bulldog Barbecue. Vince, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
And we're just going to talk a little bit about Bulldog Barbecue and sort of how it got started. So let's start with your past, though. I know you were in the Navy and you served. Could you talk a little bit about your service record?
Yeah, so I joined right out of high school. In 1999, so it ages me a little bit. But I didn't really want to go the college route, even though I later on went to college. But I just went into the Navy. I enlisted and did two. They called them cruises, but it's far from a cruise. But I did two cruises overseas in the Middle East. I was actually right off of the coast of, I think it was Pakistan when 9/11 happened. So
Oh, wow.
It was an interesting time to be in the service, but it was good times. It taught me a lot. I was stationed in a couple places, but my last place I was stationed was in Mayport, Florida, which is basically Jacksonville Beach. So
Okay.
it was right. That kind of helped influence my taste in barbecue, because you don't think of barbecue so much for Florida, but I was about a half hour from Georgia, which is heavily influenced with barbecue. So
Gotcha. So very, very cool. And then are you originally from the area, or did you choose to live here separately? How did that work out?
no, I was born and raised right in the area, in
Mhm.
Plymouth actually, and so the only time I was outside the area is when in the 4 years I was in the Navy.
Gotcha. And what was it about the area that made you want to come back and make this home permanently then?
Oh, I'm sure a lot of people could disagree about wanting to come back, but there's something about the familiarity of the area, and it's home, and
Mhm.
I've seen a lot of other places, and there's things about other places that are definitely nicer, but at the end of the day, every place has its pros and cons, and this is I feel like this is a good place to live, and hopefully, I made the right choice coming back. I feel like I did.
Yeah. Well, the business seems to be taking off, and well, not even taking off, but growing now that you're looking at the brick and mortar, which we'll get to. But talk to us, I guess, at the beginning about where you started. I know I'm used to seeing you popped up across from Krisnick's over on Blackman Street, and that's where I first sort of ran into you ages ago. So it started as a sauce, and then the food truck, and now the brick and mortar.
Yeah, so we're still working on the brick and mortar, but it started off as just a sauce. I used to really enjoy. I'm a bigger guy, so I like to eat. So one thing about liking to eat is you kind of also learn to cook.
Mm-hmm.
Most people do. So I like to cook, and back in the day, before I even got into barbecue, me and another friend and a couple friends would have. We'd call it Try It Thursdays. So we would all kind of make our own little thing on Thursdays and kind of bring it together and just kind of eat. And I noticed that I always gravitated towards barbecue.
Okay.
And I used to get a lot of tips and tricks from this guy on Food Network at the time. It was Robert Renford, I guess, but
Mm-hmm.
he was a cook from Canada, and he really enjoyed barbecue. He had a show, License to Grill, and I
Oh,
used
I know that show. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I used to love watching his shows, and like he just really like seemed to have a lot of stuff that interested me to try and cook, and it was
Mm-hmm.
fun, and so I kind of got good at making a barbecue sauce to start, because I kept tweaking a barbecue sauce to be the one that I liked the best, and
Mm-hmm.
and I had friends try it, and of course friends are supposed to be nice and say they like it, but I started a job, back then, and an office job, and a lot of people in the building, liked the sauce, so they kind of convinced me to get it bottled, and then so I got it bottled, got it in just a couple stores locally, nothing
Mm-hmm.
crazy, because it's a lot of work to get them in stores, and more so to keep it up with like what stores need the sauce,
Yeah.
and so it was just kind of like a fun hobby. But then I kind of got into selling barbecue also, and then in 2017,
Mm-hmm.
I acquired my little corner lot across from Chrisnick's that I started setting up there on the weekends. Well, actually,
Mm-hmm.
it was every other weekend at first, because I actually worked a full time job for the first 2 years over there.
Oh,
So I
wow.
would work 40 hours a week, and then I would use some PTO time to leave work early on Friday, and I'd cook and from Friday into Saturday, and then we would set up on the weekends, and then I would use so I did that every other weekend for the first 2 years, and then the other every other weekends I would try to get caught up on stuff that I had to do around the house,
Gotcha.
So, but yeah, it was a very time consuming experience, especially in the beginning,
Hmm.
but it was fun, and so yeah, so we started doing that in 2017, and setting up every other weekend, and then in 2019 I got laid off from that job, but
Hmm.
I was kind of wanting to leave there anyway, and so I started doing that full time with Bulldog, and it's kind of grown ever since. I mean, we have a very very loyal following. It's a very busy street corner.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a great street corner because it's right on a four-way stop sign, so everybody has to stop and look and smell the food, and especially in the summer when the windows are down and you smell the smoke coming, and so
That's
yeah,
funny. That's funny. I think that's how you got me the first time. I had the barbecue sauce. I want to say at like the Kielbasa Festival or something like that. I think I tried the sauce and then saw across from Krisnick's, and it was the smoked mac and cheese. I remember driving by and seeing a sign and could smell the smoke and pulled in. And this was a while ago. I'm not sure if you do still do the smoked mac and cheese, but it was one of those. I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot, and was really impressed by it. So, and the sauce is really amazing. So I'm very impressed. How much did your Navy background, like that's a lot to juggle time management wise, working the 40-hour a week and then
yeah,
trying to take care of home one weekend and then knowing that you've got to prepare for that following weekend and get out on that street corner, which rains a lot as well. I've seen you out there in the rain numerous times.
oh yeah,
How does time management and just being able to organize your life, does any of that come from your service background or anything?
yeah. I mean, definitely. The time management, being somewhat organized. I mean, we're all human, so we're all a little disorganized, but
Mm-hmm.
and then especially attention to detail.
Yeah.
Because things just they got to be right. And as far as how my time in the service helped, it's just you know it, I think sometimes it's just the push through mentality. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what helped me the most from my time in the Navy when it comes to transitioning into this is you have to get something done, and it's got to get done. Like you
Yeah.
don't you could complain about it, and you can, but at the end of the day you just got to suck it up and do it. And you know sometimes it's not fun doing it, but it's you know you just got to do it. And
Yeah.
the rain never really bothers us too much unless it's a downpour. Really,
Mm-hmm.
the wind is the only thing that really really
Yeah.
really kind of sucks. I mean, we've had the tent fly away once or twice, and
Oh wow.
so it's tough. But when the days are nice, it's beautiful just being outside, and that's kind of the concept that's going to lead us into the type of building that we're building. But
Mm-hmm.
it's nothing better than eating some barbecue outside on a nice day.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. So let's talk a little bit about that brick and mortar and sort of what your plans are, what's it going to look like, and where it's going to be.
Well, about a year ago, I purchased some land from the city of Wilkes-Barre, right across
Mm-hmm.
from Shields. It's about a block
Mm-hmm.
over from where I set up now.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
There used to be a big silk mill, and they tore it down, and it was for sale for a while. And so I put a bid in on it. It had to get approved by the city council, and
Mm-hmm.
so I got it. And it's been a long process. I mean, like I said, I bought that a year ago, and I'm still going through all the stuff as far as because it's not just buy some land and put a building up. It's a lot of learning going
Mm-hmm.
on here as far as I mean, obviously I knew how to get the zoning approval, which I got, and
Right.
but now that the long part has been like land development because because I'm building from scratch that they gotta make sure that everything's okay as far as water runoff and everything else. And I mean, I had to hire a professional engineer to
Mm-hmm.
do all this, which isn't cheap, but it's very worth it because the amount of work that they've been printing stuff out and
Yeah.
handling like paperwork with the city. And thankfully the city's been really good to work with. You always get nervous when you hear about having to deal with a government, but
Yeah.
Wilkes-Barre has been very welcoming. Both the council and especially the mayor. He's
Mm-hmm.
he's always stopping in to see how we're making out. And So it's nice feeling very welcomed from not just the community, but also the city itself. So,
Yeah.
but we bought that last year, and we're going through the land development thing, and still trying to get things situated with contractors, because that's an ordeal in itself, because
Yeah.
you know anyone who's dealt with a contractor knows that it's not easy. It's so, but we're
Yeah.
getting there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And thinking about the sauce and the barbecue that you have, what separates you from a lot of the other places? I know we don't have a whole lot of barbecue in the region, but there's a lot sort of more, I think, popping up and sort of trying their hand. I think pre-pandemic, there were a couple spots that just sort of didn't make it through. And so what is it about Bulldog that has sort of helped you through the pandemic and this sort of steady growth where now you're looking at a brick and mortar out of what was just a bottle at one point?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing I think is that everything's homemade.
Hmm.
All the sides, like you said, the smoked mac and cheese. It's a fun fact. It's not even smoked when I make it. It's
Oh,
because
yeah.
we use the smoker to keep it all warm. It's like a giant,
Oh,
warming
okay.
mold. So it's just anytime the tinfoil is pulled up to get some mac, it just kind of
Hmm.
absorbs some smoke. So
Okay.
but if you tasted it fresh, there's no smoke, in there. But it all works out. I think it tastes great.
Hmm.
It's probably our most popular side, that and the beans, because we don't, nothing's out of a can,
Right,
So
right.
I soak beans overnight and cook them for 8 hours. So it's like a homemade version of like Bush's baked beans, I guess. The
Gotcha.
way the consistency, but yeah, everything's homemade, and then even the meats. I think what separates us most from the other places is, there's a lot of places that I get it. It's sometimes it's about finding the right method that works for you, and a lot of places have like indoor smokers where you put it in, and it's like a basically an oven that has a little bit of smoke in. But we cook it just like they do in the South. I have an
Hmm.
offset smoker that I just use wood.
Yeah.
I use firewood to heat it. I cook it, and so I go through a lot of firewood every month. But that's all I use to cook it. And I think when you do it that way, you can really taste the difference.
Gotcha. No, that's amazing. Thanks for sharing that. And so, for other entrepreneurs who may have a military background or not military, but service background, who are looking to make this transition from the service and maybe start their own company, what advice or words of wisdom would you give to folks about getting their own business started who may have a similar path to you?
Uh, I mean, I guess that there's no shortcuts.
Hmm.
Like people could taste it when you take a shortcut on the food. Like, oh, I mean, I'm just talking about food in general.
Yeah.
Like if they're looking to go in the food business, it's like when you start buying stuff out of a can to save a little bit of time, or and I get it, time. There's a lot of stuff to do, and those minutes add up. But people could taste the difference when you start doing stuff the shortcuts.
Yeah.
So you gotta try to avoid the shortcuts if you can, and then there is a little bit of there's a learning curve, and
Hmm.
there is a lot of resources out there that you may not be aware of, and you can always contact your local agencies to see, but there's always a lot of resources that I found out there that can help you with stuff.
Hmm.
Is it the SBDC? I
Hmm.
always kind of get the acronyms confused, because there's so many acronyms of different things, and I should be used to it, because in the Navy everything had an acronym. There's
But
probably an acronym for the word acronym, but you know, but it's so. But there, yeah, the SBDC, I
hmm.
think that was it. But
Yeah. Yep.
it's an incredible resource, and they're very helpful, and
Hmm.
they were a big part in. I have a master's degree in business, and I still utilize them to help me write the business plan, mostly like the financial section, and then like because they're very good at it, and they're very
Hmm.
helpful, and they're a they're a very important part of me being able to get the loan to do all this. So.
Very, very cool. And could you talk about some of the resources that are available, whether you're a veteran or not, or just whether you're a veteran or not, just that you found in the region to be able to support you in this? Because as a small business owner as well, I know that it's going to be very hard to find those resources or sort of even let be vulnerable enough to sort of let someone help with the business. Can you talk about some of the other ones that you found and just sort of what that process is like?
Well, that one was the big one.
Hmm.
I know I did meet up with some people because of a while ago. I first met, I believe he's with the Chamber of Commerce. I forget if
Mm-hmm.
it's the Wilkes-Barre or Greater Wyoming Valley, but
Mm-hmm.
Ahmad, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
he's a
Model,
cool
yeah.
guy. But I first met him years ago at a Boots. I think it's called Boots to Business. It was like
Mm,
a seminar just with all the different aspects of starting a business, and it was geared towards veterans. And because there's a little bit of a transition going from veteran like being in
mm-hmm.
the service to being back into the real world, and some I think it wasn't quite as hard of a transition for me just because I wasn't in like some of the active combat zones that other
Okay.
veterans might have been in, but we were still in the service, still had to deal with a lot of the stuff they had to. I mean, I was like I said, I was right off the coast when 9/11 happened, so I saw the first Tomahawk missiles getting shot in that war.
Oh,
So
wow.
I mean, a part of me was like, oh, that's a cool thing to see, but knowing what they're going to do wasn't, that's kind of
Yeah.
but so yeah, but there's trying to think of all the resources off the top of my head. I know that if you do reach out to them, or even on the state websites, state and
Mm-hmm.
local websites, they'll give you links of where you could go to look for things, and you have to put a little bit of time into to researching some of the stuff, but it's out there.
Yeah.
There's some places that I'm sure could help with money as far as loans and stuff, but there's a lot of places that help with information.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a ton of information on the internet. And if you just spend the time to look through it and not try to be careful of the websites you use, because there's
Right. Yeah.
always somebody trying to have an official looking website that's trying to sell you something. But a lot of these, there's a lot of government websites and stuff that help you with information
Mm-hmm.
on how to be successful. So
And in your opinion, while you said there's money that's available out there, but there's a lot more information. Is that the balance that's there? Sometimes it like, well, money is great, and we all need money to run our businesses, but sometimes is it that the information is actually what you need more of? You're finding that like it's not just money, but how do I use the money? How do I find these people? Like, is information sometimes a little bit more important?
oh yeah, absolutely. Because without good information, you're going to be spending even more money than you have to. So
Mm-hmm.
it's because there's, like I said, with anything, there's a learning curve. So if you go into to a lot of these things just writing out checks without trying to figure out what's the best way to do these situations, then you're going to find yourself writing a lot of unnecessary checks. So
Gotcha. Yeah, all right. And then as a veteran, then have you found support within the community? Sort of maybe when you lead with the idea that you're a veteran led business, have you found that that's helped or gotten you into spots and places where you might not have normally gotten into?
yeah, I mean, a lot of places are welcoming to veterans. The mayor has been real supportive of veteran causes and
Mm-hmm.
other. He has a couple priorities, but veterans is one of them. And you know, but I try not to utilize that as probably much as I should. But
Mm-hmm.
I just try to rely on a good product to get me ahead. But there's definitely a lot of resources for veterans out there that are veteran specific, and
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to, like I said, the information. There's ones that specialize on just helping veterans, and
Yeah.
so a lot of information out there. But at the end of the day, all that information is great, but you got to execute also. So
Right.
so you still need to work on perfecting your craft, whatever it is that you care about.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And I think that's a really good point. And so, tell me a little bit more then, switching back to about Bulldog and where the name comes from as well.
Well, I used to have a bulldog.
Mm-hmm.
Her name was Adrian, and she was an awesome bulldog. And you know, it, when I was trying to think of a name, like of course, the dog's just sitting there looking at me with the teeth showing, and how could I not like want Bulldog Barbecue? And so, so that's where the name came from. And on my barbecue sauce, I don't know if you ever looked at the bottle itself. It
Mm-hmm.
says barbecue sauce with an attitude because I mean, it's got a little bit of a kick. It's not a spicy. I do have a spicy version, but my
Yeah.
regular sauce is probably not one of those liquid candy ones that you see in the stores. It's got a little bit of kick to it, but um, Yeah, it has a little bit of attitude, just like bulldogs. And then as far as the food, like
Mhm.
I only have one signature sandwich. I mean, I have brisket sandwiches and pulled pork and stuff, but as far as like a signature where it's different things,
Mhm.
of course I had to create the Adrian, and to to honor her,
Mhm.
and that's pulled pork with mac and cheese on a pretzel bun because
Yeah.
who doesn't like pretzel buns? So
Very, very cool. No, that's awesome. And so, I guess what can we expect outside of the new building that you're developing? What can we expect to see from Bulldog Barbecue over the next couple of years, and sort of where are you looking to grow?
well, I mean, really, my main focus right now is the building.
Hmm.
At first it started out as me wanting to do like a pole barn for cost purposes, but I also thought it'd be a cool idea to have some garage doors to open up to get fresh air, and then that kind of became an issue with the being because it's technically in the flood zone, and that's a
Gotcha.
whole issue, and the architect didn't really feel comfortable with the modifications I needed to do to make it. So we kind of transitioned to a another style of building. I'm looking at putting a pavilion up,
Okay.
where the kitchen area and all that's going to be closed in, and then it'll have kind of like an opening where there'll be a large area that's like just open, like a pavilion with
Yeah.
the roof over it, and we could put some sides up on it when it gets cold to try to extend the season, but. That'll kind of feed into that, like what I was saying before. There's nothing quite like having some barbecue on a nice day outside, and you know, and then I also have that property that I purchased is huge. It's
Hmm.
it's about a 1.25 acre, and I was going to remove a large chunk of the concrete that's already there existing, and I'm going to put grass in there. And actually, I have a bid in, to remove about 30,000 square feet of concrete,
Oh, wow.
which will still leave plenty of parking, but I want to create a space where there's a lot of grass and some, landscaping, and like put some benches and picnic tables, and I want people to be able to kind of go there and slow down a little,
Yeah.
not have to think about being in the city, like,
Hmm.
and just kind of have a nice outdoor space to enjoy your meal, and enjoy the people you're there with.
No, that's really cool, and I think a lot of restaurants, especially barbecue ones, are going that trend where it's trying to make it a destination, not so much just pop in, grab your food, and leave, but
Yeah.
come and sit and stay for a while, bring the family, and hang out.
So yeah, I mean that's the idea. We'll see how it goes. I mean, it's a long
Hmm.
road ahead of us, but I just think that'd be a great. I don't know of any other type of place around here that's like that. I mean, I think
Hmm.
space is one of the main reasons. I'm sure there's a few other places that would like to be like that, but we have the space to do something like that, and that's what we're hoping to do.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that. So, is there anything that I missed? Anything else that we should know about Bulldog Barbecue, about yourself that you want the listeners to know about?
Well, I'm sure there's probably a lot, but I just we are seasonal. We
Hmm.
go from probably March until late November. That's once it gets a little too cold, But yeah, we do some fairs, or well, we don't do the fairs anymore, but we do the
Hmm.
festivals in the summertime and all that. And we have our signature items, but we do have some special items that we make throughout the year. We do smoked meatloaf. That's a real popular item, and usually the day before Thanksgiving, we do smoked turkey legs. And we weren't really sure how that would be. I mean, people like turkey, but I didn't know what to expect being the day
Hmm.
before Thanksgiving. But we sell out every year.
Oh, wow.
We make as many as that smoker will hold.
Hmm.
And it was a real popular item. So
That's amazing. Well, maybe it's time to get another smoker and double up on them. So,
yeah, yeah. I mean, once we have the building, we're planning on probably getting another smoker. I can't imagine it being too long before we'll need one. So
yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, Vince, thank you very much for your time today. This is Vince Balint, who is the owner of Bulldog Barbecue. Make sure you keep an eye out, hopefully here soon, for their brick and mortar store. This was a great conversation. So thank you, Vince.
oh, thank you very much.
All right. And that's it for this episode of Representing Equity. We'll talk to you next time.
All right, thank you.
This podcast is sponsored by the Connect program, the entrepreneurial and economic development arm of the Greater Wyoming Valley Chamber of Commerce. Our goal is to ensure that all entrepreneurs, startups, and existing businesses have access to free resources, providers, and facilities needed to grow in northeastern Pennsylvania. We leverage our partner network to align innovation, strategy, and accessible resources that meet the needs of the business community, providing them with all stages of education and technical resources to start up or grow. Through the click of a button, we allow any business to request services including business plan assistance, financing, workforce solutions, transportation strategies, academic industry partnerships, work-based learning experiences, entrepreneurial mindset and exploration, and more. For more information on Connect, please visit our website at wyomingvalleychamber.org.